So let's go on. We need to move a bit faster so that we can, I'll be answering some of your questions. I got an answer from Huawei on a number of things with regards to what is going to happen. So that is how you do a schedule. Also, how do you configure a security policy? You remember what we did with a policy? We had sort something out. I've just seen somebody do something here. Yeah. So as I was telling you is that, for example, in a policy, you usually have a name as well as the description to give you an example of what it is. You can actually put it a policy group. It's very important to tag your resources as well as whatever you have so that it is easy to know. For example, you can tag it to give think of it like hashtag. So that is how it would work. Then we have the source zone, the destination zone, the source address or region, the destination, we have the user, the access mode, the device, the service, the application, URL category, schedule. You can see these. You can even reference some of the existing objects in a security policy. You don't have to put them up manually. You can see some, just decide to choose. You can switch between the source and the destination. So these are some of the things that happen when you're configuring a firewall. So some of the example of configuring security policies, examples for configuring security policies. Let me open something on my end. Yeah. So when looking at, for example, when you're having an enterprise networks, the PCs that are there within the 5.0/24 network segment are allowed to access the internet, but PCs at the .2, .3, and .6 in this network segment are not allowed to access the internet. So what happens? So you have, yes, this trust zone and this untrust zone, which is this server maybe is being accessed over the internet. So all these computers in the network are allowed to access the internet, but there are some few elements or some few computers within the same network segment that are not allowed to access the internet. So what happens is you'll create the security zone, you'll configure the interfaces, right? That we're going to be accessing, for example, the upstream and the downstream. Then you configure the user and the authentication, configure the objects. That in when talking about the objects is the address and the address group, region and the region group, service and the service group, application and the application group, user and the user group, terminal device and the terminal device group, as well as the schedule. Those are some of the objects. Remember, we saw how they look in the web user interface. Then you go to now creating the profiles, which is optional. You can decide whether the profile is antivirus, intrusion prevention, URL filtering, data filtering, file blocking, application behavior control, mail filtering, advanced persistent threat defense. So you can see the mandatory parts are in dark blue, and these one, the optionals are in lighter blue. Configure the security policy, save and commit, then you end. That process. So that is how it is. So let's look at this process. And remember, when you look at this view is what? Somebody can put it in the chat. Which view are we in the firewall terminal? When you're looking at this firewall is called NGFW. Which view are we in? System view, yeah. Brian, command line. That's not the answer, obviously. That's the system view, right? So since we are in the system view, look at this. We type security policy. That is the first thing. So we are about to create, right? So you can see it goes to policy security, role name. I'm going to see this name is going to call, I don't know how to pronounce this, but let me say Kelu, right? Then we have the source zone, which is the trust zone. So this policy will be applying from trust to untrust, right? So then we have the destination zone and trust, the source address, that. And say, I think these are repeated command. So you can see when you're typing the source address, instead of putting /32, just put a space, then you put the CIDR, that is the slash notation. So that is the source. And remember, what are we doing? We are trying to sort the other issue that we had. This was the question that we had. We want to ensure that 2, 3, and 6, the PCs with IP 2, 3, and 6 cannot access the internet, even if they're within the segment that is allowed. So you can see source address 2, source address 3, source address 6. What is the action? To deny, right? Then you're going to create a policy rule that allows the segment to access the internet. So we'll start by creating a policy to deny access of the special IP addresses. Then the commands for creating a security policy that allows, so you can do this over command line. You can see it is a bit easier, but you can still obviously do it over the web user interface. So you can see same case. This is another KLU2. Source zone is trust. Destination zone is untrust. Going from the LAN to the internet. What is the source address? 192.168.5.0/24. What is the action? To permit, right? So when you look at this is how you can do it over the web user interface. So the name, you can configure the address group named IP deny. That is what you can give it. You can give the exact .2. Remember this one. For the other one, you also remember you also had the slash notation. .2/32, .3/32, .6/32. And if I may ask, maybe why is the network segment /24 and the individual IP addresses /32? Who can answer? Who can answer that? Hopefully, maybe there's some people who have done subnetting here. I've asked, why is it that when you are putting the individual special IP addresses to be denied the access to the internet as /32, but when you're putting the network segment, you are putting /24. Same case here. Why are we not putting /24? Why are we not putting /24 here up until the end? Or why are we not putting /32 up until the end? Anyone with an idea? Hope you've got the question. Anyone with an idea? I can see Charlotte, you have said something directly to me here. /32 is the actual host. I can see something like that. I can see while, let me go to the chat where they are and open it. Let me make them a bit bigger. /32 is the whole subnet. Is that really the answer? I think it's because of its private IP or a host. /32 match the exact IP, and that The 32 are in different networks from those are no. They're not in the same network, no. Is a default subnet mask. What? Maybe you can say it determines the subnet. No. Because they maybe that is the loopback address. No. And maybe PH unifull. You must leave 2 spaces for broadcast. And I know there's that issue, but that is not what we are dealing with here. 32 means one reserved one IP, while 24 support can host. Is it 60? All that default mask for a single specific? Exactly, Nicholas. That is the answer. That is the default mask or the default slash notation for a single specific address. Because if you already know slash notation, you usually have, it denotes the boundary between the network, the octets that are left for the network address and the host address, and the part of the IP address that is meant for the host, that is meant to be allocated for the host, and the ones that are meant that are supposed to be for the network. So don't confuse. Doesn't mean slash 32 and slash 24 are indifferent. Slash 32 just means that we are talking about a subnet, but a subnet with only one IP address, right? Yeah. So I think that makes it. So it's very important to know those concepts. That is why networking is key. Networking knowledge is key in this kind of, even in security. So you can see what is happening here. After you've added the address group, you've added the security policy deny. So after you've created the address group, right, which is to be denied, and the IP addresses to be denied, because you have to create the address group first, is you now go to create the policy to deny access to the address in the address group. So you can see we'll call it policy deny. What is the source address? IP deny, right? Because you've already created it in the previous step, and the action is to deny. The next thing is you now go and create the policy for permitting. And now, since it's already, you don't have to create an address group for it. It's the whole network segment. So you'll now use what? You'll now use 192.168.5.0/24 from trust to untrust. The policy is called permit, and you can see the difference here is that you are allowing now all the other computers within the same. So there is also something called SPF. What is SPF? Application specific packet filtering, right? So a single channel protocol will only use one port during communication. For example, www will only use one port, but FTP passive can use 21 and another random port. So so how do you only use packet filtering methods to precisely find the ports used by multi-channel protocols? Because, for example, FTP passive mode will choose the port 21 and another random port. So for protocols that use random ports, pure packet filtering cannot be used. It cannot be used for defining the data flows, because it will always deny what is required. So come in application specific packet filtering. So it's usually advanced and it actually checks the protocol information and monitors the status of the connected application layer protocol. And for all the connections that are of a specified application protocol, ASPF will maintain status information and will dynamically determine whether to permit data packets to pass through the firewall or actually to deny. So here we now have what we call the dynamic what? dynamic creation and deletion of filtering rules. So the rules are not static, the rules are also dynamic. So let's look at an example. So ASPF, it can support multi-channel protocols like FTP. So look at this. User 1 uses port 4952 to set up a data channel with user 2. You can see that. So, so what happens? Look at the session table. FTP 4927, and it is going to the server to port 21 of the server. Again, the client, the 10.0.0.1 will also set up another port, multi-channel 4926, and it will now open another one called port 4952, another data channel with the user, right? So you can see what happens is that SPF, application-specific packet filtering, will be used to filter the packets at that layer, right? So you'll have what you call a server map, right? And the server map will have these parts: an inside address, the port, the global address, again the port, pro, application type, TTL, time to live, and also the time left. So what happens in server maps is entries generated when the firewall forwards the traffic of multi-channel, such as, so the entries are usually generated when the firewall has forwarded the traffic, and then usually have what we call triplet server map entries, which are generated when the firewall forwards the traffic of the simple traversal of UDP through what we call through the NAT protocols, such as MSN, TFTP, all that after SPF is configured. Static server map entries are generated when NAT server mapping is configured. So this is the process of generating the server map. And also dynamic server map entries are also generated when NAT and no part is configured. So this just get a clear understanding of what a server map is, and a server map is usually quite key in SPF, right? So there's support for multi-channel protocols, multi-channel protocols by port identification. So you realize that usually a data channel as well as a control channel and all that, they have to be a multi-channel. There has to be more than one channel within it. So how do you configure basic access control list? For example, in the system view, you type ACL 2000. So it can create, for example, what happens in 2000. You can see this just given the ACL name as 2000. ACL basic rule permit anything that is coming from 20.0.0.1, right? So what you're saying about how about CIDR? CIDR is usually part of, it's the CIDR notation, right? That is how the CIDR notation / notation are one and the same thing. Configure port identification or port mapping. So port mapping, FTP port 31 to ACL 2000. Nice. So you get the rule to permit all the traffic coming from a certain server. Then you map the port, the FTP port, like 21 or 31, to the access control list. Also have what you call fragment cache. I'll just mention about the function. I'll not go into the details. So it's used to cache fragments that arrive before the first fragment in flow, and it prevents the firewall from discarding fragments. So it actually keeps parts of the cache so that there's no what? especially when you're having the encapsulation and decapsulation. So fragment cache is usually there. Persistent connections. So sometimes we might need a persistent connection. So there has to be, where should there be IG mechanism for the firewall session table? Then problems caused by the session aging mechanism to special services. So if no data is transmitted within a session aging time, the session is disconnected. Think of it like if you ever try to access something, then after a while you find you're logged out. So it's a very easy kind of a thing when you look at it. So something else that you need to remember, something that you really need to remember about when you're looking at the delivery, when you're looking at maybe HCIS security, you need to always have an eye on the exam content file, which you're going to be looking at, and see what is there. But before you do that, let's look at a small quiz here. So in which of the following situation will a server map entries be generated? NAT and NOPAT is configured. NAT server mapping is configured. I remember I talked about it a bit, but ASPF is configured. And a persistent connection is configured. So in which situation, and if you look at back, you can check that here. Sorry. When you look at this, in which situations is a server map generated? You can see these they are here. You can see NAT and NOPAT. You can see static SPF, right? So these are the situations in which a server map is generated. So what is the answer? In which of the following situations will the server map entries be generated? You can tell me. What is the answer? Remember, you have been told the keyword, don't forget, don't jump. Situations. You can see there's a clue somewhere here. Which of the following situations? Yes. You can see some of you already checked on it, maybe. So there are 3 of them, right? Apart from the persistent connection. So server map entries are not generated when persistent connections are being configured, because a persistent connection will not be really requiring a server map. You can see. So you can see there'll be some static server map entries generated when NAT server mapping is appearing. There'll be some server map entries that will be generated when there's a multi-channel protocols, right? There'll be also a server map entries that will be generated when when there's used about NAT, and also when NAT and no part. So let's look at the other question. A file has 4 default security zones, and the security levels of the zones cannot be changed. True or false? And first of all, as you say that, you also add which are those 4 default security zones that are there. Don't just answer true or false. Which are those 4 default security zones? You tell me, and also say whether that statement is true or false. Which are the 4 default security zones? See, someone is saying false. Then kama maneno imekuwa ngumu, imekuwa rahisi. So it is trust and trust, DMZ, and local. That is the truth. What about the levels? Can you change the security levels of trust? Can you change the security levels of untrust? Can you change the security levels of DMZ? Can you really change them? Can you change the security level of a zone? No, the reason why you cannot change is the keyword is here, their default, right? For example, you cannot change the default to become, the default zone denies everything, right? You cannot change its level to become, it allows some things. For when you set, when the default zone as DMZ, you are trying to use DMZ, demilitarized zone, you can only try to use it. But if you want to have a security level that can, a security zone that can change, you create one. So here, and the security levels of the zones of these default security zones cannot be changed. So not just the whole of them. So we just looked at the principles of firewall packet filtering and also some of the firewall forwarding. So I'll give you 5-minute break. Then we come back. We'll be having Dr. Bart Miller from around 5:55, around 6 for a bit of like an hour or so. That is an optional session. Don't feel as if you're supposed to be, but I would really advise, for the sake of your cybersecurity career, to not miss that session. So with that, let me pause the recording. See each other in 5. Yeah, sure. I'll try to put the sign-in sheet. So let's go on. What we've gotten. The other thing I would like to have, let me just pause a bit. Let me just sort something here. I'll give the announcement at around 5:55 for those who are waiting for the announcement with regards to what happens after tomorrow. Okay, so we talk about intrusion prevention. I tried to look at the other slides and I realized they are going to be a bit too technical to end the session with. So I didn't want to go through them right now. So I saw it fit that let's go through intrusion prevention because it's quite important. As a cybersecurity analyst, as a cybersecurity consultant, or as a cybersecurity technical person, it's all about ensuring that you secure resources. And sometimes prevention, we usually say prevention is better than cure, or an apple a day keeps the doctor away. So how do we do that? So in looking at malware, which is the most common form of security threats, and something such as greyware. Greyware is now those things that you're installing. For example, it's a good Microsoft Office application, but again, you'll be cracking it. So it isn't really only a Microsoft Office application. It is doing more on the back end. That is some form of greyware. So instead of dealing with some virus attacks, we just now have to look at combinations of network threats, viruses, hacker intrusions, Trojan, botnets, spyware. The list is endless. And when you look at these, we need to realize that the current defense mechanisms struggle a lot. I'm currently doing a certain research on how you can use machine learning and artificial intelligence to detect zero-day attacks and to ensure that the antiviruses and also the intrusion prevention systems and the detection, especially phishing that takes place, can be understood. So that is what we need to try, and I'm trying to look at how we can apply machine learning. Chariot, if you want the announcement, wait for it in the WhatsApp group. I've already mentioned when I'll give it. So let's go on. So we're going to be looking at the different types of intrusion prevention. And also we look at network antivirus policies, right? So when looking at these, let's look at this very fast. So what is really some of the threats in some of the networks today? Yes, Oracle, like monitoring events and also trying to look at homoglyphs. I don't know whether you understand things such as homoglyphs. They're written like this. I don't know, you can check on what they look like. So some of the viruses, the threats that are there, they're being used for different ways. They even state-sponsored attacks, as I mentioned earlier. And also it is no longer about the small things that you do for fun. It is people are even now changing those weapons into weapons, which can be even interest driven, all round, well formulated, stealth in a manner that even having things such as rootkits, backdoor programs to do something like industrial espionage, surveillance, malicious programs. I believe even some of you can see some good, some well-known hackers. They even say they actually have to ensure that their web cameras they have a stick. I don't know how many of you, if you have a laptop, you are always cautious and you think there might be someone using your web camera to check you out and changing it or something of that sort. It's getting trickier each and every day, and the threats are evolving with time. So when you start to look at this, there are some intrusions that are done by hackers. And then looking at this, look at this example. You have a malicious employee. That is an insider threat, right? They're within the network already. They actually send out an intrusion. For example, they go through the core switch. The worm goes through the core switch. They go into the servers, right? The data server, the web server, the mail server, and also and now this one is also another intrusion that can take place is from a hacker going through the router, even targeting also the server. I can see some charts here. In cybersecurity and networking, you become more paranoid the more you learn, right? That's true, Gift. I have it pulled up now. I just wanted to watch the classes again and to make sure I've taken. Yeah, I think you're talking to JBs, right? Okay, that is once they're using a sticker to cover my webcam. Yes. Also sometimes feel it, even wonders, I don't know what usually can do. So these are some of the things that can happen, putting the security of your data. So these days you never know where the intrusion can come from. It can come from anywhere. It can come from anywhere. So someone not to share the attendance up until the end of the class. You cannot be asking about it every time. Not to share, don't share it. So there are some people just come into and sign that and go away. So let's go on. So these are some of the DDoS attacks that can happen. You can have a UDP flood, a SYN flood. We already mentioned these as ISMP flood, and they actually rely on botnets, some zombie computers. We have a CNC attack. We have a SMARF attack. What is a SMARF attack for those who know it? Maybe you can check and Google it very fast. It's usually one interesting one. So you can see it can come from the internet, and ensure that the normal users cannot access whatever the resources are there in an enterprise. Another one is viruses and malware. So you can see this is the logo or the illustration of a virus. So virus is the one that is most commonly known, but these days you don't have just viruses. You have even Trojan horses, and you even have spyware. So Sharon is asking, how does DDoS help the attacker gain financially? Actually, the attacker can gain financially when when there is downtime, and maybe you have made an agreement with customers, that you made an agreement with customers that your services will not be down for this number of time, this number of, like, you have assured them of a certain percentage of uptime, then they're experiencing that downtime. They can sue you, and that hacker may be part of the customers, and they can choose to sue for lack of services or lack of availability of, because of the lack of availability of services that they require, and maybe they can even sue that their businesses have gone into losses because of their service that they depended on was down. So they can even gain. Yes, imagine imagine AWS or any cloud provider just down for not even just 2 hours, even we're talking about seconds. Yeah, we're talking about 30 seconds is a lot, or even a minute. I don't know whether you ever sat down and and uh, and followed up the number of companies or enterprises that depend on cloud services provided by some of these providers, even airlines. It can be crazy. It can be quite crazy. Yes, also competitive advantage of the competitor. The competitor, when you are down, can you imagine if right now Safaricom is down and you have to depend only on another provider. That provider will get some upper hand. You can see somebody saying about Cloudflare. Yes. Yeah. So they really protect, they do a lot in terms of security and compliance and identity and security with regards to cloud provisions. So what is an intrusion? Think of it this way. An intrusion, talking about a threat and a feature. So features is either an intrusion, anything that is ticked in this table follows into what we can think about as an intrusion. So when you're talking about tampering with web pages, cracking system passwords, copying and viewing sensitive data, obtaining user passwords using network sniffing tools, accessing servers without authorization, obtaining raw packets with special hardware, implanting Trojan horses into hosts, all that, they fall into that. It's only that a denial of service attack cannot cause unauthorized tampering. That is why you don't see a tick here. So all these, it only can rely on unauthorized access, can also come up with that. So why do we have intrusions? They compromise system integrity, confidentiality, availability, and controllability. We usually call the first three the CIA triad. So that is the essence of an intrusion. So how do we prevent them? So you can see, let's look at this example. These are security devices in a security system. So you can see we have something like a monitor intrusion detection system, a security hardened room somewhere here where people have to see. We have a door, can act like a firewall. We have a secure transmission and encryption of a VPN, like the way money is being transported. You cannot find a lorry, okay, are they lorries, vans that carry money without even an escort. We have an access control system for authentication. We have a security guard with a scanner and for scanning and also vulnerability. You can think of the security guard like somebody who is like a scanner or a vulnerability search, because they have to search you and check that you don't have weapons. We also have a monitoring room, like in the CCTV. In these days, in computing, you usually call it SOC, right? Security Operations Center. So we have that. So when you look at the different devices in a security system, you can relate them to something. There's a question here. Does a CCTV system also need a firewall, or if it is NVR? NVR, maybe tell us. NVR based, NVR based, tell us more. Sorry about this. I just had to answer something. So we have an intrusion prevention system. We also have an intrusion detection system, right? Right? So I can see Dennis, you've already been answered, but you can continue with that discussion there. So we have an intrusion prevention system, and they can be deployed in two modes, as offline or inline. So when it is offline, it is deployed on a switch to perform port mirroring through the switch. Then also when it is deployed inline, it is deployed in serial mode to block attacks in real time. So it is not doing it in passive way. It is doing it actively without even just mirroring the ports. It can actually block the attacks. So those are the two modes of deployment of IPS. So IPS does more than IDS, right? It doesn't just detect, it can also go further and prevent those attacks from happening. Yes. Okay, we go on. So some of the technical features of IPS are these. We have real-time attack blocking, real-time. Also have self-learning and self-adaptation. We're talking about how does it do this self-learning. Actually, by looking at what it has learned, it is actually from a previous attack, it sets itself up and adapts to changes. There's also some user-defined rules that can be put. And also it has some awareness of it actually learns the devices in a network, the services that are there, the ports that are usually open, the applications, the users, something of that sort. So zero configurations to go online. So sometimes for it to just be already set up and to be deployed, you might really not need to configure it. So you can even check from the Huawei USG 6000 VIV firewall. You can check the behavior. You can check the behavior. And also the other thing is you can also do what? You can also come up with some reports from all these and see how you can do it. So when you look at network antivirus overview, Network antiviruses are usually, somebody talked about network internet security. For example, and a good example is like Kaspersky Internet Security. Can help you scan even for search results on Google. So they are usually meant to deal with viruses as well as malicious code. So viruses sometimes are detected from what we call a signature, right? Because most viruses actually have a signature associated with them. And those signatures are usually now entered into an antivirus database. That is why you can see sometimes when you're updating your antivirus, you're getting database definitions updates. So when looking at these viruses, worms, and Trojan horses, those are some of the subtle differences or some of the differences that are there between viruses, worms, and Trojan horses. So in terms of existence, viruses are parasitic, worms are more independent of each other, and Trojan horses are also parasitic. And talk about replication mechanisms, it gets itself into the host programs, but for worms, they are self-replicating, but for Trojan horses, they are not self-replicating. In terms of the infection, it runs on host programs. In terms of worms, system vulnerabilities, and also is based on carriers or functions. So when you're looking at all these, you can go on and follow it up and see what the differences are. But just remember that a worm is kind of a variant of a virus, right? But it has some differences. And a Trojan horse is a kind of a malicious code that is kind of parasitic in nature. And when you talk about using an antivirus, we are actually referring to the use of a software that can help to mitigate malicious code. So some of the antivirus technologies that are there are two types of antivirus technology. We have single device antivirus, and also we have a network antivirus. So for example, you can see what is here. I can see this is a process viewer. So I can be able to see, I think they usually see the process name capable of identifying a desktop program. I think this is internals, right? I'm seeing here is internals, a process description, process company. So you can be able to check that. So we get to know the difference between a single device and a network antivirus, what happens. So in a network antivirus, is some application scenario. So internet users can access the internet and need to frequently download some files. So they need to know that the files that they download, they are not infected by viruses. Servers deployed on the internet need to frequently receive files, right? So they also need to know that the files they're receiving from the internet, they are not infected. Good. So we have some ways of scanning or some modes of actually implementing a gateway antivirus. So we have proxy scanning and also flow scanning. So those are the modes that are there. Not about proxy scanning is, yeah, but it true. That is true, Oracle, that there have been a rise of even Linux related malware that is affecting even Mac operating systems. They're being now affected. So packets that require virus detection are transmitted through the gateway's protocol stack for caching and then sent to the virus detection engine. In flow scanning, file signatures are extracted for matching against the local signature database. This is how it happens most of the time. And it relies on stateful inspection and protocol passing technologies. So some of the device vendors, even including the UTMs and the AVG, they provide two antivirus scanning modes, that is the proxy and the flow scanning. So how do you really know how an antivirus works? There's a signature, I talked about this. There's a signature database update that usually happens. And then if there's a signature match, a virus detection has taken place. Okay, so this is what happens. So we're having a virus infected file. So first of all, the application protocol is identified. Is the protocol support? Yes. So whitelist matched? Yes. No virus detected, right? If it is matched, it does not match the whitelist, there's a virus that has been detected. So it has to go through virus detection, that is. So if it goes through virus detection, there's also like you can go through a file hunter, something that is even from the internet. Virus detection can happen in real time through the internet because the database can be updated if it is a bit old. Then when a virus has been detected, there's that, sometimes this is what you guys usually do. You go, if it is speaker or those kind of things, you put them in an exception. So if they go through an exception, it is allowed because you have explicitly told your antivirus to do it. Then if it is application exception matched, yes, allow for exception, allow, alert, or block. Then if it is doesn't, alert, block, declare, delete attachment. So that is basically it. Then actions taken by the firewall when an antivirus is detected. So this is what happens. So these are some of the antivirus response actions. So when you've already seen these actions here, the allow, the block, the declare, the delete. So this is what happens when by a firewall when a virus has been detected, because a firewall can be kind of an antivirus. So it can alert the user, it can block the file, or maybe the code. It can declare and can even delete only that attachment, or maybe we really say you can clean or disinfect. So something of that sort. So checking the firewall antivirus the results, firewall antivirus, you can even check it within the web user interface. Lawrence, you're asking what antivirus can we take for or works with Linux? First of all, you need to ensure that your firewall works very well, the firewall that you have in your Linux. Make sure you have configured it well. Make sure you also are checking the ports, how they are. And so where does quarantine fall? Quarantine. Quarantine can fall under what? So alerting doesn't do anything. Blocking. So it can fall under declare, right? It can fall under declare. Yeah. Yes, gift. Because it has declared and it has said, this one is going to jail. And the jail is quarantine. So you can see, for example, you can see acre.com.zip was deleted from the email because it contains virus. So you can see these are prompts that has appeared from, you can see these are threat log within the firewall antivirus. So let's look at this as we finish up. I'll finish a bit earlier so that I give people a bit of time. We settle in so that we can hear from Dr. Joseph J. Bartmiller. Then we can say it's nice. So which of the following actions can be configured as the antivirus actions for SMTP? SMTP. Listen to the question very well. Which of the following actions can be configured as the antivirus actions for SMTP? Remember in SMTP, simple mail transfer protocol, right? Somebody is saying all. Why are you saying all? Look at these examples. What has happened here? It was an email, right? So what has happened? The attachment was deleted, right? But the email has to be delivered, right? Cannot block, right? So the actions that can be done here, you can declare, right? Because at this point, a declaration has been made, right? And then a deletion, right? A deletion of the attachment. But you cannot block the email, right? Rarely do that. Usually rarely get that, oh, you guy, I've alerted you, I've gotten some spam and I put it directly there. Have you ever gone to spam to find some things that you were expecting last so many years or some few weeks ago, but they went to spam? That is thing. So the answer is C and D. Then as we finish, is which of the following statement about intrusion prevention are false? Which of the following statements about intrusion prevention are false? So Kevin, you're saying delete. You know, we're saying those can. You know, you can decide if you're not going to put delete attachment, you can put only declare. But we are saying which of these can be configured as the antivirus actions. They can. You can decide to put one, you can decide to put both of them, right? You can put a number of them, but which are the possible actions? And the possible actions are declare and delete attachment. Then, which of the following statements about intrusion prevention are false? The IPS supports inline deployment. The IPS can detect intrusion behaviors as well as block them online. Viruses can be regarded as a type of intrusion and defended against accordingly. The IPS can interwork with the firewall for real-time blocking. Let me repeat this question. I haven't gotten it yet. Which of the following statements about intrusion prevention is false? So IPS supports inline deployment. That is true, right? So we don't have to deal with that. It can support inline deployment. That is one of the two deployments. Number two, the IPS can detect intrusion as well as block them online. Yes, it block them in real time, especially when it is inline deployment. Number three, so it cannot be the answer. So viruses can be regarded as a type of intrusion and defended against. Yes, because viruses are intrusion. The IPS can interwork with firewall for real-time blocking. No, they cannot interwork. It's either it is actually going to be the IPS doing they don't work like they say, like they interwork, they work together. They say you do the work, I do the work. No, it's so the answer about intrusion prevention is that it doesn't really, in its setup, it is not set up in a way that it works or internet works with the firewall. So we've learned about intrusion concepts, intrusion types and difficult behaviors, the IDS and IPS. We've also looked at some of the antivirus concepts and basic principles. So that is nice. I'll tell you this. There are some slides that I haven't covered in this module, but I'll not look at them that much, but are very important. Maybe you can take note of this if you're writing somewhere. Make sure you go through what we call network address translation, dual system hot standby, especially dual system hot standby is usually something that is covered a lot in the HCIA security exam. But I'll still give you a video that talks about it a lot. Then we have the firewall user management. So those are what I've looked at. We are still one module behind. We haven't looked at a bit of encryption and decryption, PKI certificate, as well as the application of cryptographic technologies, but we're still going to look at that tomorrow. And then you're going to look at security operations, data monitoring and analysis, digital forensics. Then you look at the cybersecurity emergency response. So, oh yeah, so you're saying what okay, let me repeat, Kenya. Let me repeat what I've just said. So what I've just said, there are some things in the third module that I've not covered on today, which is network address translation, dual system hot standby, and firewall user management. But today we have looked at firewalls, an introduction to firewalls. We've also looked at the overview of intrusion prevention. So the three is what I'll expect you to look at course closely. There's also a dual system hot standby lab. I'm sure those who are going to be taking part in the lab bootcamp will actually need to know how to, will actually need to understand the concepts behind dual system hot standby. Dual system hot standby is just like having two firewalls in a way that if one fails, it can automatically reroute the traffic to the other standby firewall, and life goes on well. So it's a good setup. It's usually enjoyable to set it up. So something that can do. I know our time is usually very short. So tomorrow I'll try to move with regards to application of encryption and decryption as we finish, as well as security operation and analysis. So that is what I'm about to talk about, Rogers, is you're going to be getting a link to the exam for elimination, maybe, to your email, which is going to be sent to you. That is what I was told. And again, with regards to the voucher for the ICIA security, that will be awarded to the top 25. So it means that the vouchers, if you want to do the ICIA security exam, even you can still do it. You don't have to wait for a voucher to get it. The content that you've received and the training that you'll have received is good enough and ready, make you ready for the exam, right? So that is the announcement. So let me stop the recording.